Did you know that 89% of award-winning ad campaigns fall into just 6 categories of thinking? And now the ad nerds at Ad House Advertising School have taken that thinking and turned it into a deck of cards. Ad House of Cards is a deck of 35 cards designed to help you come up with big ideas. Each card includes a prompt, a proven technique used by award-winning ad pros to jumpstart your thinking and improve your campaigns. Visual thinkers can use the backs of the cards to free associate using gorgeous photography from the artists at Unsplash.com. Ad House of Cards will teach you to hone in on the benefit, dramatize it, romanticize it, look at it sideways, and twist it into a pretzel. And the best part is that all of the proceeds go to the Ad House Scholarship Program, supporting our mission to make the advertising industry more inclusive. Ad House of Cards, a deck for ad nerds. Get yours today for just $20 at adhousenyc.com.
Welcome to the A-List.
Hello, ad nerds. This is the A-List podcast, the podcast that asks the world's top advertising professionals how they got started in the business. I'm your host, Tom Christmann, creative for hire at tomchristmann.net, and one of the head ad nerds at Ad House Advertising School. Today, you'll hear my conversation with Gavin Lester. He's currently CCO at Zambezi, an independent agency out of Culver City, California. But he was the art director on one of my favorite ads of all time, an ad directed by Jonathan Glazer out of BBH for Levi's called Odyssey. You should look it up. It's incredible. We talk about it in this episode. Gavin and I also talk about being a conceptual artist in school, and then going from that to writing ads, and how advertising can be a public art. We talk about BBH versus Goodby, Beatles versus the Stones. We talk about how to be an ad nerd, how to grow your business, how growing a business can be a creative endeavor, and much more. So this one has a lot to think about, and Gavin has one of those awesome English accents, which makes everything just nicer. So without further ado, here is my chat with Mr. Gavin Lester. Thanks for coming on, Gavin. Hey, Gavin, welcome.
Yeah, thank you so much. Thanks for having me. As you can probably tell, I'm a transplant from another world.
That's right. I hear an accent. It's a Game of Thrones sort of thing.
It is.
You've got going on there. Where did you grow up?
London. I'm from London.
London.
I always say North London.
That sounds like Danger Mouse when you say it.
It is.
London.
Well, that's London, the home of the capital, where Prince Philip was laid to rest recently, and sad. Phil the Greek. He was Greek, actually. Do you know that?
Yeah, I know. He was born on a table in Corfu, I think.
I didn't know he was born on a table. I mean,
yeah. And it's in a conference room somewhere now. I saw it on CBS this morning or Sunday morning or whatever it is.
The table where Prince Philip was born.
Yeah,
an IKEA table. It was an IKEA table, wasn't it? It was like
it wasn't that fancy. It was like it was made in a factory. It wasn't like a handmade
flat pack table, Allen key set.
Yeah,
screws missing. I've got one of those tables.
Probably.
Yeah,
probably. You grew up in London, and did you? Where in London? Were you North London, South London?
So North London. So North London is we spell it NORF. North London. Yeah. And North London is if you kind of put a like New York over London, and you got the boroughs, right? North London is probably like coming from the Bronx.
Okay.
All right. Yeah. So I'm from the Bronx.
Yeah. So you Arsenal? Are you Chelsea?
No,
who are you?
Ironically, no, I'm not. But my dad. He was from Brixton, which is South London, South.
Yeah.
And Millwall was a team he supported forever. So he supported Millwall he passed away last year for 70 years. I mean, forever. So he now Millwall, they're the hooligans. You know,
they're one of the toughest team. Like in terms of the fans, they're the most scary.
I mean, if you ever want to see kind of like white supremacy at its kind of most like I don't know, amplified. It's go to a Millwall game. It was
Yeah.
disgusting. And we're Jewish. So like imagine being Jewish. You know, you don't tell people you're Jewish when you're at a Millwall game. I mean,
Not at a Millwall game, no.
I mean, Tottenham, they serve bagels because they're known for they're huge
That's
Jewish
right.
following.
Yeah.
But
yeah.
you know, it's pork scratching, which is chicharrones, basically, at a Millwall game. Yeah, it's fun. It's a fun place. So I'm from London, North London. I guess what you want to know is my backstory is I grew up in a North London Jewish family. My mum was Sephardic Jewish, you know, so she's from Spain, Portugal. My dad's the Ashkenazi, which is probably most New Yorkers are Ashkenazi, right?
Yeah,
that kind of sardonic, kind of self-defacing humor. And you know, I think my parents lived vicariously through me and my brother, you know, because my dad was an actor. He liked to act. My mum was an artist, but that wasn't a chosen career. So my dad had got into a very famous drama school when he was younger called RADA, right? And he couldn't go because his parents were gamblers. So he had to kind of get him out of, pay all the bills and get a job. So his whole life was like, you know, it was kind of like, he was a sales director for a company, so he was able to kind of perform as a salesman. But I think he really kind of like his true passion was acting. So there was a lot of like vicariously living through his children. So both my brother and myself, you know, we had a very good upbringing in terms of the encouragement to be creative. My brother's a feature director, and I was, you know, I'm an art. It was always into the arts as well. So it's always pushed. So that was great. So have that kind of, you know, most parents say, art? What do you mean art? You go be an accountant. You go be a doctor. You know, so we were really fortunate in that respect. And so from that, I guess I went to art school. I did a fine art degree.
In London at that time, art school wasn't a lot of people go to art school. In London, right? It's a common thing.
Yeah, I mean, there's a rich history of the arts in England, in London. Like St Martin's was a very famous school in Central St Martin's. And I actually decided to go out west. And there was a great art school in Bath, right?
Yeah.
And it's called Bath Academy, and some very famous artists went there, like Howard Hodgkins and Glenn Brown, these famous artists that you may or may not know. And I went there, and I studied there for 3 years, and it was fantastic. It was a real kind of, you know, you were just given your studio. And we're always looking for autonomy, right? We're constantly struggling to find autonomy in advertising. And I was given it for 3 years, where it was really, here's your studio space. We'll
do whatever you want.
Do what you want for 3 years, and the lecturers will come through, professors will come through, and you have to kind of talk to them about your work, and they'll give you a point of view. And then at the end of the 3 years, you put on a big show and see you later. And it was great.
So did you want to be a painter, a
sculptor?
Okay.
I was a conceptual art. I'll talk about it because I've been studying it and practicing art longer than I've been in advertising. I do it to this day, so I still kind of practice it. And the thing is, I'll tell you the story why I probably got into advertising was, you know, I was in a couple of shows. It was called one was called Transmission Report, and one was called Heaven on Earth Gives Me Migraine. And I got kind of like pushed towards this big art dealer at the time, and this was like the mid 90s. A guy called Martin Maloney, who would kind of represent some very significant British artists. And I went to see him in Hoxton. He had a place in Hoxton. And he was looking at my art, and he goes, "You're a thug." I go, "Yeah, that's great. I like being a thug, right?" He goes, "This piece here, I made this one piece." He goes, "I need you to make 100 of these, all right?" And all of a sudden, this kind of like, you know, this cloud of like depression fell over my head, because this art dealer was looking at it as a commodity, not as this pure expression, right? And it was kind of like, oh shit. Now that wasn't the reason why I got into advertising, but it kind of,
it soured you on art, though. It kind of like it made you feel like, oh, this is just another job at some point.
Well, it soured me as a job, as a profession. It didn't sound me on art, right?
Right.
But what advertising has allowed me to do, because you know we get paid pretty well in this business, it gave me that the autonomy and the to have the opportunity to make fine art on the side. And I'd like to talk about. I think there's a distinct difference between.
I'd love to hear about that.
Well, I always talk about when I, you know, like, yeah, and people may disagree, but my relationship with advertising, I love it, but it's more like an actor, right? I also like an actor. So, and I talk about, who do you want to be? Do you want to be The Rock or Daniel Day-Lewis, right? So in this business and advertising, you can be The Rock. You can be hugely successful. We've seen the cult of a personality take over the industry for a bit. But I think I like to be more like a Daniel Day-Lewis, where I'm kind of like behind the curtain. I'm not really the focal point. There's no credits rolling at the end of a piece of marketing with my name on it, you know?
Yeah.
And I think that part of the job that I love is that understanding, the empathy, and getting into that character, getting into understanding the different tones of voice. And you'll find your own voice through that naturally, but ultimately it's like you're playing a role. With fine art practice or any practice like playing, music, or if you're, a poet, whatever, it's purely autobiographical,
Right. It's all about your tone of voice and your expression and how do you come at an art project differently than how you come at a advertising project then?
Yeah, I think an advertising project it's pushed towards you, right? You know what I mean? There's like, okay, client is requiring this right now. They want to push this forward. This is, the demographic you got to go to. For me, art projects, they come in different ways. I could walk towards one, or it can just kind of gravitate towards me. And and then if it kind of resonates, it will stay with me. And then I will kind of spend sometimes many years with a thought before I actually execute it.
Yeah.
So it's different. Yeah, very different.
And where do you keep those thoughts? Where do you have like a file, or do you have like a place on your computer, or is it just like, if it comes back, it's the thing. If it doesn't,
that's exactly it. Yeah, I think if it sticks, you don't need to write it down. And I think with a thought like that, I mean, you feed it over many years. You kind of interrogate it, and and then you have to get into kind of, can I afford to make it? You know what I mean? With advertising, it's like, what you're going to spend up front, right? Yeah, okay. Here's like $100.
You should.
Times have changed. I mean, we still kind of moan.
What's the budget?
Yeah, the budget is always a question. There's like, somehow we always find a way to make it with zero money or all the money, but we always ask for more. But that's just but the way we do it in advertising, it's kind of, you're spoiled in a way, you're definitely spoiled. I mean, the thing that you're deprived of sometimes is time, or, so that can affect not necessarily the outcome, but it can affect the kind of you have to apply more rigor to it a lot quicker. And it's so it's just a different work process, and I don't put one more important than the other. I find this business incredibly fascinating, and I think it's a privilege to be on the zeitgeist. Things that what we get exposed to. Like, you see things that are 18 months out from being in the marketplace, or you see things that are maybe should never go to market, and you're asked to decide, so you definitely get a lot of exclusive treatment in this business. So I'm constantly fascinated by it.
Sort of living in the future. So you're sitting in that art dealer's office, and he's basically crushed your dreams and told you, like, okay, now become a factory for these things, and I want to make money off of you.
Yeah.
Where do you do from there? Do you say, like, do you have to find advertising, or did you know people in advertising already?
Yeah. Well, my brother was trying to weed his way into the film industry, and he was working at a production company, and he was running basically, PAing. And he met these two young creatives who worked at Leo Burnett. And he got talking to him, because my brother, he's a yachner, right? He talks a lot. And it was like, and they said, oh, I was kind of at a loose end, and goes, my brother's really creative. What do you do? He goes, oh, we're the copyright and art director of this agency. And he goes, oh, how did you get into that? He goes, well, we did this course at West Herts, Watford. It was called Watford. I don't know. It was like one of those creative circus, courses, And I did that, and it was like a intense 18-week program, and then after that you kind of do an internship. And when I got there, it was like, oh my word, this is incredible, because it was like the generation of creative thinking, over and over again was just like, it was constantly having to be inspired was fantastic, and I met some really great people there.
Yeah, that's the thing I'm thinking. Like, as an artist, they give you carte blanche. They give you the whole, paid for your semester, so you have all this space, whatever you want to do. And it can be, for me, like, it's like, if I don't have, like, what's the story, what are the edges, what's the budget, I get a little lost. So to the sort of connection between art and advertising for me is like, it's sort of like an art project that somebody else thought of, and you need to jump in on.
That's right. It's a piece of public art, basically. Public art.
Right. Yeah. So did you find that stifling, or did you find that sort of?
No, because I am, on one hand, I spent many years in the life room just doing academic type art, which is what you have to do. But I'm a conceptual thinker. So, I always talk about how, ideas aren't my problem, getting them made are, right? So I really kind of thrived in this environment where it was like, conceptual thinking, let's do it, let's go for it. I mean, I also think it's there's just there's some fundamentals that you just, as soon as you learn the fundamentals of marketing, right? It's basic. How do you look? What you're looking for in the brief? Single-minded proposition, tone of voice, who's the audience, how much money they're going to spend. Those. If you talk to most creatives, they will go to those 4 or 5 things on the brief first of all, and then they're off.
Right.
And so learning that kind of strategic mindset as a creative was a good thing for the conceptual kind of output. So I loved it,
Yeah. And then, so out of this Watford class, you had a book at that point. You started shopping it around.
That's right. So me and my partner, Anthony Goldstein, who actually, and we worked together 8 years before he went to Wyden Kennedy. I think he's most famous for that cabinet work he did, we shopped it around, and we had this huge ass portfolio, because back in the days we would have this portfolio case, and we shopped it around to every agency in London. And I think we did an internship at JWT at the time, and that was okay. And it was a time where it was kind of like just Michelle though, and it was the CCO smoking in the room. It was like ash everywhere, and that was an interesting experience. But then we finally landed an agency called Euro RSCG Wennock Gosper, Euro RSCG, which is Havas, right? We used to call it Euro Arse Cheese. It was kind of like it was one of those like hangover from the 80s agencies,
Yeah.
And they had 2 buildings. Listen to this. They had 2 buildings, and they were on Covent Garden, Charing Cross Road, right? It was just off the Charing Cross Road. And one building was where all the management would sit, Mark Wennock, Brett Gosper, Chris Pennington, and they had Peugeot there, right? And because they also had Citroën as another car brand, they had to split the 2 buildings in half. So all the young juniors were in this one building, all on their own.
Wow.
The management. And we just ran riot. I mean, the things that we got up to, you couldn't do now. There was to give you an example, there was a I think his name was Frosty, and he looked like a horse, basically. That long face looked like a horse. And when he went on vacation, he removed all of his kind of belongings from the office, took everything out, put down a load of hay, right, on his office floor, in a nose bag, the old nose bag with horse chestnuts in it.
Yeah.
And then he came back, and he's kind of had a short temper, and he slammed the door and cut his door in half like a barn door, and that swung open like a barn door. So, back in the day, that was like, every day there was something like that. Every day there was, there was bad behavior, which unfortunately can't do anymore. But it kind of was a creative experience, as a young rascals kind of running around crazy in London doing mad things. It was
who were your inspirations at that point? Like, who did you look up to in the business, or was it more like, I just want to make
Yeah.
cool shit.
Well, it was kind of like, when I got into the business, and I think the big teams that they were Flinton and McLeod, Richard Flinton and Andy McLeod, they were DDB at the time. There was Tom Carty and Walter Campbell, who were Abbott Mead Vickers. They did finished Surfer.
Yeah.
And then there were like the Farquhars, who was over Lagos Delaney, So you had that. It was a time where it was like you were either, a brilliant headline writer or a brilliant visual storyteller. That's the kind of place. And I think Andy and Rich were kind of the kind of creatives that were able to do a bit of both. Very high concept. But I was, being an art director, my natural instinct was to kind of see these things, like, really get inspired by the Flint, by I guess Walter Campbell and Tom Carty.
Yeah,
they were great. Yeah, so we're kind of followed them down a little bit of a path, actually. But anyway, we called it Euro cheese, and that was one crazy experience.
And that was just to get a job. Were you just like, I'll take anywhere at that point? Is that the kind of thing you were, or were you more like, I want to work at Wyden someday? How do I get there?
No. It was, it was like you were happy to get any job, just get your foot in the door. It's I think it's different now. I think people like very kind of like curate their own career. They know what they want from the beginning. I would tell people, go work at an average agency to begin with. If you can make great work in an average agency, it's going to be a cakewalk. And I think we learned a lot. So we got to the point that my partner and I, we wanted to get out, but we started to make test commercials, right? And we would make commercials. We'd go and blag a production company for some money, and their young director would write ads for our clients, and we'd make a bunch of them. And we'd also do the naughty thing where you remember back in the day, you had 3/4 inch tape. We would put fake clocks in the front of them to make how they ran and put them into award shows. And we won a bunch of awards.
Oh, nice.
I won't say what for, but we won a bunch of awards. And that got us a job at BBH in 1999, right?
Oh, wow. Yeah.
So
that was the hot spot.
Yeah, that time it was like BBH was
Levi's.
Champagne moment. Yeah, champagne moment. And, we were 3 years in the business, and, we got this job, and you walk down the hallways of BBH, and it was like these big glass office doors, and if you did a bad ad, everyone would stand out there and look out the window and say, "Dead man walking," be like, kind of, because Hegarty's office was at the end. But it was a very, very well-tuned operation, BBH. It was like it was good to see. Obviously, creative was the product, but it was definitely they called it the Holy Trinity, the kind of the importance of strategy, the importance of account management, the importance of creativity, kind of as a collaborative thing, became a really kind of a good thing to be around, to see how how things really worked, how things really got made, and how things could actually also be not just great creative, but could also be effective.
Yeah.
And that's, so I learned a lot of lessons, and having John Hegarty as my creative director was, it was like it was a blessing, I guess. And it was,
what was that like? What was he like? What did he want from young creatives?
He would always come into your room and say, "Good is the enemy of great." And I think he was just looking for greatness. I think it's a very simple binary. It was like, make it great,
Yeah.
And make it, make me feel something. Make it, I think he was very interested in, hopping over the industry into culture. And I know we talk about that a lot, but really kind of making a point of that, and that you do that by great things. And Levi's really kind of was the poster child for that agency for something that became far greater than an accolade within our industry. It became something which resonated with culture. So and then my partner and I were very lucky. We got to work on Levi's, and I think that was when we kind of had that turning moment where the light shone really bright on us, and the stars aligned, and we made a spot back in 2002, Levi's Odyssey, with the kids running through the walls, and shot with Jonathan Glazer.
That's one of the greatest Levi's ads ever made. It's beautiful.
Thank you. Yeah, and it is a piece of art, because it's not
it's not selling you the, they were tough jeans, right? They were hard jeans, right? That was the thing, and you took it in.
Yeah, the brief actually was, it was a new kind of product SKU for them. It was an engineered jean, and I remember the brief to this day. This is the kind of the genius of the strategy department was bring dramatic attention to how Levi's engineered jeans are designed to fit the contours of your body, right? So that then you look at the demographic, it's like 15 to 24. And then you look at, and then all of a sudden it's like, oh, 15, 24, rites of passage and freedom and, and it was very, I wouldn't say it was quick, but it was very like, it was pretty well directed. Obviously you needed the spice of the creative department to get there. And all of a sudden, when you get onto the Levi's train, it's moving very, very quickly in terms of like, wow, I remember I was talking to, before we kind of landed on Glazer, I spoke to Brian Singer, and I spoke to Chris Cunningham, and I spoke to Rupert Sanders. This is when Rupert was coming up. We were coming up the same. So I spoke to all these directors who were kind of the hot shots at the time. And then we landed on Glazer. And it was, an amazing experience because we were with Jonathan Glazer working side by side for 6 months. He just finished Sexy Beast, and and we were just, and he was,
my favorite movie of all time, by the way. That is my favorite movie.
That's a great movie.
It's perfect.
Yeah, it really is. Some of the sound effects are actually in Odyssey from that movie.
Oh, really?
Yeah, he brought some.
That's interesting. He was like, "I'm working with these sound effects. I'm just going to use them." That's funny.
So that was a 6-month project, and get 6 months to work on anything, like
right.
To tell.
Yeah,
and it was also a time where kind of early stages in post work as well, and we worked with CFC and Framestore, and people were they hated Jonathan Glazer basically based on the fact that how hard he was pushing them, in terms of getting it right. So it was good to see that perfection, so that was great. But that was our first album, so I always say like,
that was your Boston.
Yeah, but then again, it's like, this industry is not about your first album; it's about your second, your third, and your fourth. And I think you put that stuff behind you pretty quickly because the phone rings a lot and the press covers you a lot, and all of a sudden it dwindles away because this business just moves on, and it should, right?
Yeah.
So if I was keeping going, so it was BBH. We made a lot of work at BBH, and they would talk about making us partners. It was also, we were like these kids, we were like kids. We're like in our early 30s or something. I don't know, we were 30. Maybe we were late 20s, and all of a sudden, we were kind of asked to go to New York because BBH New York was kind of taking hold of the North American Levi's business, and they wanted some help on that. So
who was there at the time?
That was Kevin McKeon. Kevin McKeon, and it was Emma Cookson and Cindy Gallup. Yeah, that cast there. Yeah. And after that was Kevin Roddy. We came back, and Kevin Roddy was there, and we got to make two other Levi's spots with them. And
you got to live in New York for the first time.
I did.
Was that your first time out of England?
No. England is the beauty of working in advertising in England. It's like,
oh right, you were shooting in Paris. You were shooting
South Africa.
Everywhere.
I don't know. I went everywhere. I had to get extra pages put in my passport. I was traveling. We would like write for a month and then shoot for a month, and then it was amazing. It was like I remember talking to John Hegarty about John. I said, John, look, I've got to get from Argentina to New Zealand on this job, and it's telling me I have to have a layover for 36 hours in the South Pacific. Surely they'll get. And John's like, don't worry, it'll work out. It's like John knew the kind of like that the airlines will the airline gods will make everything good. I wouldn't have to have a layover in the South Pacific,
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
But traveling was huge. But yeah, getting to
exciting.
New York. So this was interesting because this is where I actually, where it all started to happen. Where the personality of America and New York became far more important than advertising because it was a whole new dialogue, right?
Yeah.
And I was completely taken by it. And my brother actually, a few years prior, had moved to Los Angeles to kind of pursue his directing career. So it was like, and this is what I'm saying about that, our parents encouraging us. They knew that America was a place that wasn't a meritocracy. You could actually make it, there's a chance to make it here.
Yeah.
And so I came to America and I kind of like had all the fun that you could have in New York with being single. It was like Caligula. It was all an awesome time. And then I finally, met this girl who I married. That happened, and I met this girl. And I was going back and forth from England at the time until I finally got to New York and stayed. And BBH was a good agency. It was a good agency, but it was too familiar. It was too. And New York was too familiar. It wasn't foreign. And I'd been going back to New York for years, so it was foreign. So I took a job at Goodby, Silverstein, right? And then all of a sudden it became completely, a whole new world. It was foreign all of a sudden. It was a small town. It was a small city. And it was like advertising. Was
San Francisco.
San Francisco. So that was great because after working with John Hegarty, and then going to work with Jeff and Rich, you kind of felt the presence of, other great creative and people who
how would you describe the difference between the two philosophies of those agencies? They're two great agencies. What's the difference?
Oh, wow, that's interesting. Well, I think you have to also look at Rich and Jeff slightly different as well. I think that's what you have to do, because I think Rich is definitely the visual storyteller, the visual kind of guy, and Jeff is the writer, and that wasn't present in BBH. It was more of a visual storytelling company. Yeah. I think John was almost like a minister of advertising, and I think I have a hell of a lot of respect for Jeff and Rich, and they were more like students of it. Still, they kind of like were really into it and kind of like more. They were a lot more on the ground. I felt. But John was really kind of like elevated and.
So, and I've heard for working for each one of the, creative directors there, whether it's Rich or Jeff or whoever else is there, it's a completely different agency, whoever you're.
It's also Steve Simpson and Jamie Barrett as well.
Jamie Barrett. Yeah.
And, but they were, we went out for lunch, they'll take you out for lunch. So I went out for lunch and, I think, they were very talking about vulnerability, and it was a time that Christmann Porter had really taken off. They kind of seized the moment, the digital work, and did some fantastic stuff. And Goodby was having a moment where they were kind of reflecting, and they were saying, we need to win, right? We need to beat these guys. They were, which is to be self-aware, right?
Yeah.
I hold a huge amount of respect for those guys because what they wanted to do. And they built a team. And I'd like to think I was part of that team because the next year we won Agency of the Year, right? And they put certain people in places and they kind of pushed a certain way and they managed to get they became the champions. That was a fantastic moment. So going from a place like BBH.
But that was their incentive. They saw this other agency. It was like Beatles and Stones kind of vibe. Like they saw this other agency kind of taking risks and doing crazy stuff, and they were like, "We need to do that too. Let's figure out. We need to hire people. We need to like change things." What else did they change?
I mean, like.
More digital.
Digital was people. Like, it was Will McGuinness was there. Jeff Benjamin had left. He wasn't there when I was there.
Jeff Benjamin popped in.
But it was Will McGuinness was really, and a guy called Christian Haas was also there, who now is running YouTube. There was, who was it? There was Mark Wenneker. There was John Matejzik. John Matejzik was my partner. There was Margaret, Mimi Cook. There was Tyler Hampton, Paul Fultz. I'm just trying to think. There was basically a great bunch of very talented, but very, very nice people. Yeah, really fun people. We have this saying. I talk to Tyler Hampton every day, and it's like, "Are they one of us?" It's like, "Are they one of us?" And what it's meaning is like, I think you probably know when I say, "Are you one of us?" Right? You know what I mean? It's like there's a way that we we speak and and correspond with each other, that is kind of
ad nerds.
It's ad nerds, but it's also the right amount of cynicism,
Right.
a healthy dose of irony,
Yeah.
but also this kind of like ruthlessness and this kind of passion. It's like all these things that are mixed together. That is like, are they one of us? Where they're not. It's a very non-political group of people. I thought Goodby was a very non-political agency. It was it was a fantastic place. I thought.
How would you talk? I'm just thinking of the listeners and thinking, are they one of us? Yeah. How do you become one of us? Like, how do you groom yourself to do that?
I would say it's authenticity. I think it's being yourself, and I think it's about the acknowledgement of that there is successes that happen outside of yourself, even though you're competitive.
Yeah.
And being able to have a conversation with a creative person as on the level,
Yeah.
And I think I don't think I've always been one of us. I was a shit, and I was very arrogant growing up, earlier in my career. But but when you kind of can have a dialogue that's very equal, I think that's it, So
it also strikes me that knowing the work that's out there, knowing the directors that are out there, knowing it was easier in our time before everything, changed. I feel like it was easier when there were producers that were bringing you stacks of 3/4-inch tapes and being like, these are the best directors in the world for your job, or, you'll never get this guy, but you should check out his reel. Nobody does that anymore. How do we get people to be more in line with like what is going on, what is being made, and trying to beat it and trying to be better than it? Or are we now in sort of in competition with TikTok and TV shows and sports?
I think so. I think, I will say this. It's like, my journey through this industry, I've kind of learned the beauty of all these different channels and all these different ways to express, be it a slow, long crafted film or a TikTok video that we just worked on.
Yeah.
But to answer your question, I think we are definitely in competition with the Kardashians. That's who we really are with, and I think that's actually the right thing to be in competition with. A lot of the issues I have with the industry is it's so insular. It's like it pays tribute to the little groups of people that are kind of handing the candle around, and it's kind of like, okay, yeah. But did it really work?
Right. Did it sell more toothpaste?
Yeah. And I always talk about, I don't think it has to be pragmatic. I don't think that has to be an ad built by a committee. I think it can be fantastic because I've done it. I did it with Odyssey. I've done it with other things as well, and it can be done. So if you can somehow remove the kind of the thing that we lean on, this crutch of an industry we lean on, and throw ourselves out into the wilderness, jump out of the nest, right? I think there's opportunity. And you know what? No one cares if you fail or succeed out there because there's so much coming. You can recover pretty quickly.
Yeah, there's no more dead men walking. No. You have to sit in your shit now for 2 months because you just made a okay ad. Like you're going to get another shot in the next 2 hours.
Exactly. And I always say to teams, I say like, when you're trying to let them down about their ideas, they say like there's nothing wrong with this idea. It's just in the wrong place, at the wrong time. Yeah. There will be a place and a time for it. So but just not now. And I actually believe that. I believe that. And I think, there are brands that you work on that you have to stop thinking about how am I going to win the next Grand Prix and think about how does this actually be. There are some brands out there that aren't going to get the attention of the award shows, but they can be best in their category, right?
Yeah.
Think about all the B2B pieces of business out there.
Yeah.
So, and there's nothing wrong with that.
And they can get people's attention. They can become part of culture.
Yeah. I think BBDO did a really great job of GE, all the stuff that they did there. I think Ogilvy and Mather did some really great stuff with IBM, when they did the kind of the atom, the little guy that was created out of an atom.
Yeah.
So I think there's always an opportunity. But, I think I don't know. I think it's a very interesting time, you know, and I think I grew up in we will say the age of engagement. Do you remember that term, the age of engagement, right?
Yeah,
And it was like it's really important that you engage with your consumer, and then we shifted to the age of disruption. Remember that, the age of disruption
Yep.
came along, and okay,
Yep.
you've got
Yep.
to disrupt.
I was at Chiat when that
Oh,
was
there
going.
you go. So that's the age of disruption. And now, if you think about where we are, we're post that, but I think we have to do both at the same time. You know, there's so many channels. You have to you have to engage, but you don't have to engage with the masses. You might have to engage with a certain audience, and then you have to disrupt that because that's what they want. They want that kind of quick hit or something, you know.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
so it's interesting. It's interesting. Culture's really interesting right now.
Yeah, it is. Where do you look right now when you're working on something? Where do you like to, like, you know, there's a time to work on the brief, and then there's a time to, you know, sort of engage with, how do you stay engaged with pop culture and stay, I guess stay cool is the uncool way to say it.
Yeah, well, to be honest, it's hard, and that's why you have some great young talent around, because they are really feeding you with that stuff.
Yeah.
You know, it's like things are blurry. You know, things are a little blurry. So I would wish I could
can't pay attention to it all.
No, and I wish I could sit here and say I read 5 papers a day. I'm on Reddit 24/7, and I'm also got a Twitch account, and and I'm joined my kids on their Valorium game on I don't know. See, I don't even know. I'm trying to make it up. I can't even. You know what I mean? I wish I could say that, but I will bullshit you. You know. But I think I know enough. You know, I think I know enough, and I know.
And then hiring people like what Goodby did, you know, and having the right crew in there.
Yeah.
How did you get to where you are now? Tell me about where you are now and what you're doing these days, and what's exciting about it.
Yeah, well, Zambezi, I don't know what you know about Zambezi, but Zambezi was an agency that was founded with Kobe Bryant about 12, 13 years ago with Chris Rye. Chris Rye was at Wyden Kennedy. He was running the basketball business. And I think, Kobe was driven to do more than just basketball, as you know. And he wanted to start an agency. So Chris was 27 and he took the leap, you know. And they were kind of really driven to be more of a sports marketing agency. And, they're relatively successful doing that. But then about 5-6 years ago, they came to me, and they, for some reason,
where were you at the time?
I was at Deutsche at the time. I was running Netflix, HTC, and then Sprint. And maybe I was at 180. I think I was at Deutsche maybe I was at 180 when they first came to me, but I was at Deutsche after. And they came to me, and I kind of like brushed them off, because we just won. I can't remember, I think on the second time, they just won Sprint, and I was like, oh my God, I'm going to run this account. This is huge. I thought it was awesome, but telecommunication has its own challenges. Yeah. And then
lots of retail ads.
Yeah, lots of moving shell games. I call them shell games these days. And I then kind of engaged with them, and I was given an opportunity that you kind of can't refuse. You work at an independent agency with skin in the game, and kind of the cat that got the cream. And I kind of count my blessings every day, because it really is an opportunity to have the vantage point as a CCO and a partner of a company that is, I think we're obviously, the plane is constantly being built as we fly it, and it's, but it's definitely growing. And, Jean was coming on board, who's the CEO, and female-run agency. There was a lot of kind of like good contemporary thinking, and I was able to kind of, I guess they called it Zambezi 2.0 when I joined, and Jean took the helm. And I think it's proven to be kind of a really great ride, and we're growing, and we've won some really great pieces of business, and we're getting a lot of attention, and we're still on our journey. But it's been a good ride. And
how do you get past the sports marketing pigeonhole thing?
I think by having other business, going after other businesses, it's kind of, it's just kind of, exactly. Just an evolution, the business. And I think that's what I learned from BBH, and that's what I'm bringing from BBH, is that BBH, you would work on Audi one day, you'd work on Levi's the next day, you'd work on Mentos the day after that, you'd work on different brands. So you'd really tune that ability to kind of like swing in different personalities. And I think that's what I want to show here, I wanted to bring here. And I think, weirdly enough, the Zambezi name comes from the bull shark, which is a shark that can swim in both bracken and saltwater. And so the adaptability was here. And my whole kind of thing was about, being lots of different things, being an actor and doing different roles. So it was almost like written in the stars, that we would come together. So it's great. And it's sports marketing. I mean, we still get a lot of opportunity for sports marketing,
Yeah, that's nothing to sneeze at.
No,
don't push that away.
No. I mean, not at all. But it's great to have diversity,
Yeah. How did you come through the pandemic with all of your teams and
what do you mean in terms of working remotely?
In terms of working remotely, like coming back to the office, what's the plan?
Well, I think, I come to the office every day. No one's here. I mean, there's a couple of people here once in a while, but I come to the office because I like to have that division between home and work. I like to make my bed in the morning. I like to get quick dressed. I like to just I'm working. Yeah. We are keeping it very, very loose right now. I think, and I think people have different processes. We have people that have joined this agency. Maybe 25% of this agency is people that haven't even stepped foot into it. We have people that are working in different states, but it's working. Yeah. So we are going to just see how it goes. And I think if people can be as effective or more effective working at home, that's great. If people want to come in, that's great. Yeah, I don't think it really matters yet.
I think there's a good side to it where we're learning, how to make. I mean, I was a freelancer before this, and I'm a freelancer again. I feel like freelancing makes. Did you ever you freelance?
Yeah,
a bit in between jobs, but never as a long term. Like I'm just going to be this.
No, I did it for maybe a year and a half, the longest, and I loved it. But I guess we say that the freelance, full time is the illusion of security, and freelance is the illusion of freedom. It's like you're just trading off one anxiety for the other. But I guess what you're about to say is the kind of the remote working thing was.
Yeah, you have to learn how to do it.
Yeah, you do. And I used to work with Scott Kaplan. I don't know if you know you guys.
Oh yeah, of course.
Yeah, so
Cappy.
Big shout out, Scott Kaplan, big guy.
Cappy. Yeah, we got to get him on here.
Oh my god,
he'll never shut up. I'll never get a word in edgewise.
I mean, he has to. He would be the best radio personality, wouldn't he? I'm trying to get him into cryptocurrency right now, and he's all neurotic about giving.
Oh God, there's no way he's going to get.
But
he's making NFTs out of his paintings.
That's right, out of his paintings. But we worked on the East Coast. So I would be in LA and he'd work in the East Coast, and I'd get up in the morning and I'd go to a coffee shop and work with him. And he's a very, very quick, dedicated,
he's very prolific.
So it was a very good 4 hours, 5 hours to get it done.
Yeah.
So a lot of the time spent at an agency is it's like talking to people, having look what sneakers do you want to buy next, all that kind of stuff.
Cranking stuff out is the key. It's what I learned when I was working with Cappy at BBDO is just crank and just have ideas. Don't worry about like, is this good enough? Is this good? No, just move on. Get to the next thing.
Stick a move, and that's
stick it on the wall.
Yeah, and then you do the edit, and then you do. Yeah. I think the thing is like, as a creative, you've got to remind yourself that you're in it's a safe zone, it's a free zone, and mistakes are great, and things that don't work is great. It's not until you have to go and present that you kind of just share it appropriately, And but no, I think freelance was really a real fun time. It was fun. But for me, it's like it's, and probably for most people, there's a purpose when you're in a business, and you're, and I'm a part business owner, and that is something which is also a creative, venture, to grow a culture, to grow a business is a very, very exciting thing and a new thing. It was a new thing for me as well. So I've I've actually kind of dimensionalized my kind of myself through this process. So where freelance was always like a means to an end. It felt like a means to an end.
Right.
It could be very financially rewarding, but it was like,
yeah, you didn't really care if you won the pitch or not. You know.
Well, you kind of sometimes cared that you would go another round. You know, like
right.
you get,
Yeah.
like you kind of the whole psychological thing about where you position yourself was completely opposite to what you usually do. But it's a good thing. I think people should definitely spend time freelancing because understanding how running a business and how you show up and how you're a vendor. Because people who work in advertising don't understand that they're a vendor. They think they're an artist, just purely artist.
Right.
I think there's a really good learning, and I think it actually makes you better. You know, it makes you better.
Right.
As a
right. Because it doesn't really matter if it's like the most creative thing ever if the client doesn't buy it, and if if it's not going to get through, then
that's
you don't get to just go.
And you can like sometimes what clients want to hear and what creatives want to hear are two different things, but they could be the same thing, right?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? You could be selling the same thing, and there's ways to kind of position things and change the optics appropriately to kind of get what the creative wants as well. So
yeah,
I think
that's something you definitely learned at BBH too, right? I mean, the ability to get close to your clients and I feel like that is the toughest thing about these days. It's so hard to get to know anybody.
Right. Yeah. You mean just during COVID?
Yeah.
You only see half of their face, but
well, some clients don't turn their cameras on.
I know.
Yeah. How do you do that?
I know. It's interesting, isn't it? I mean, it's like I had this theory, and I was talking about with someone this morning about this theory that right now we're talking about the go back to work policy is we're going to be flexible, like I just explained.
Yeah.
But as soon as there is a competitive, advantage to being in the office, like Omnicom's kind of stock goes through the roof because of it, or everyone will be doing it, and we'll pivot and shake back to it as well.
Yeah, and that's why I'm like everybody needs to get vaccinated, because if you're not vaccinated when that happens, you're out. You're out of a job. It's like not that you'll get fired from any place, but just like you won't be the freelancer that they call if you're not able to go on the shoot or go to the meeting or whatever.
Exactly.
What did I not ask you? Because I feel like we're coming up on time here. What should I have asked you? What do you want to talk about?
What do I want to talk about? Well, I think I'll tell you what I talk about. I think going back to maybe some of my management, the way I've managed. I've been.
How did you go from hotshot creative to manage? It's a totally different job.
Yeah, well, I mean, I became a total dickhead, arrogant dickhead, and
in the middle,
and I paid the price
the
for being
ACD
a
years.
You've been there, right? So, and I use it right now. I say this is age appropriate behavior for some of these people. I talk about putting people on flight paths if they want to be a CD. I'd love to make someone a CD, while they work here, or help them go to their next job, and so they can take advantage of it. But I always talk about, kind of age appropriate behavior. They're a dickhead. I was like that, and it's okay. So you can see that. I think my I talk about my management style is that I kind of keep things very flat, I think I like everybody who gets a job at Zambezi, whatever they do, be it, someone in operations, someone in the creative department, whatever, I'll have a talk with them, half an hour chat with them. And it's probably much like this, where it's I find it very uncomfortable knowing that someone might have a preconceived idea of who you are, or a necessarily of fear, like being a CCO. To some people, could have a huge, could be pretty intimidating, and I know how that feels. So I like to remove all of that and keep things very loose and organic and conversational and flat, And I say to people, we're no different, we're all creatives. The only difference is that I've just got more experience than you. That's all. Doesn't mean I'm right. I've just got a bit more experience than you. So I like to keep things really flat like that, and I think that really helps people just have this loose approach to their thinking. I like to talk about, also like to talk about what we do at Zambezi. We, like everybody, we have our philosophy, like the idea of kind of, being very diverse and female run, and that we are an agency that is about being adaptable. But ultimately, all of these agencies, we all do the same thing, right? We're all offering the same services. We have, we're fully integrated and we kind of do media and all those things that are great. But I think what I like to say is rather than use that as a sales technique to kind of recruit people, I don't say come here and you'll do the best work of your career. I'll say something like, I'm not going to say that. I'd say it's up to you, right? So I think what I can offer, or what we can offer when people come here is the opportunity, is that studio space that I had at art school, right?
Yeah.
If you want to take advantage of it, it's there. It's on you.
Yeah.
So it's kind of going, so I like to talk about that. And I also talk about never present something you don't want to make. When you get the whiny creative saying, I can't believe I have to make that. Well, you fucking sold it.
Yeah.
Why'd
you show it?
I can't be pissed at a creative who's a client has made so many changes that it doesn't kind of look anything like the first script they shared. That's not necessarily the creative's fault. But if they go and present something that gets bought, it's on them. So I'm just, so what I guess I'm saying is that there is a studio space here that you can either paint the Sistine Chapel or not.
Yeah. Yeah. And make what you can and learn along the way and enjoy the process too.
Yeah,
I think every single job is, it's not always going to be people running through walls upside down in Levi's. It's like sometimes it's just not going to be that. So to learn from it and then next time, use that.
The brilliance is the I think what we don't put enough attention on is the brilliance of the concept, the solution, and we put more about the kind of the recognition. We look at the recognition. We don't break down the concept and say, well, this is a really great solution. Like, great, we've been writing headlines. We rarely write headlines. We're pitching a really interesting piece of business, and they require it. And it's like, wow, it's the fundamentals of writing a really great headline. It's just like, I wish there was more of it. I really do. I wish, and I feel like sometimes I'm talking like a communist because I'm talking about an old standard from our business.
He wants a billboard. Oh God.
I mean,
there are still billboards.
Yeah, they are. And but
that Marmite stuff was pretty good.
That's right. But I believe there's room for everything. That's the beauty of it. There's a room for a Peloton connected to a vending machine, that gives you the more calories.
There's room for innovation and there's room for new things, and TikToks are going to be just as boring as billboards someday. And it's important to know to know as many things as possible so you can make those connections. But I know what you're saying about writing sometimes if I'm stuck on something, I will just forget the brief. Forget like the deliverables on the brief and all the different, it needs a 15-second ad and a 6-second thing. And I'm just going to write some headlines. I'm just going to imagine they have some print ads somewhere. Imagine it's another, because it just, or their Facebook ads or whatever they are, but they're headlines. And they have to communicate, and it has to communicate all of it in this square.
And they're organized. It's organized, right? It's organized.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's like, and being an art director, we used to do these, the same thing, but with the visual headline, basically. We used to call them, what the term is VCMs, a visual coincidence malarkey, when you have an object that looks like something else. It's like, that's a VCM, But I think it's, I think I would like to think, as much as I'm putting myself out there to remain curious and learn about all these new channels, I think it's very important that people coming into this industry learn about the old things as well. I think it just makes the offering so much more richer.
I think there's also like the old things are the new things, just in different packages. And if you can write a billboard headline, you can write a website headline. It's
I did if you remind me, I did
humans looking at it.
I did a thought leadership piece for Adweek, and it was about the sculpture of the girl,
the fearless girl.
Fearless girl, right? And the whole premise of that piece was around, in a time where technology is so advanced that we're doing kind of AR codes and we're doing social pieces and expandable things and 3D projections. The thing that is most applauded, most talked about, is a sculpture, right?
Yeah, could have been made in the 1200s.
Exactly. So never underestimate the power of anything. Never underestimate it. So, and I think it's a good lesson to learn because, if you talk about being disruptive, where like, BBH was When the World Zigzag, and was it Shy? It was We Are the Pirates. And, it's all about doing the complete opposite, right? So
it's all about getting noticed. And that doesn't always mean do the thing that everybody's doing.
Yeah.
Oh my God, I could talk to you for hours, Gavin.
No worries.
How can people get in touch with you? Where can they reach you if they want to?
You can reach me
with their books.
Yeah, gavin.lester@zmbz.com. I would gladly look at some great books and talk to some great people.
That's awesome.
You never know. I'm actually hiring if anybody is looking. So.
All right. What are you looking for?
I'm looking for a senior team, a junior team. Right now. Yeah.
All right.
Yeah, I've got some great opportunities. Our accounts are TaylorMade and USGA and Traeger grills and UKG and Spindrift and Google.
Those are some good ones.
I can't.
Google. Heard of it?
Yeah, we're working on something with them, and we've worked with Beats, all sorts of people. We've had, we have the champagne, and we also have the kind of the fizzy water,
the bar snacks.
Yeah, all that stuff.
But I've seen your work is amazing. Big fan. So I should just wrap it up and say thanks for coming on.
Yeah, well, I appreciate it. Thank you.
Hey, it's Gavin Lester, everybody, from Zambezi. Give him a call. Maybe there's a spot over there for you in Culver City. So this has been the A-List Podcast. I'm Tom Christmann, your host, and please rate and subscribe us wherever you listen to this, and share us with a friend. And go buy a deck of Ad House of Cards at adhousenyc.com if you can. It's $20, helps kids. Music was done by Ross Hopman over at Duotone Audio Group. I love you, Ross. Okay, have a great day. Bye.